Julian has recently started playing peekaboo with Jake and me. She's usually sitting in her little chair on the kitchen or dining room table, and so we actually crouch down, and then we pop up, peekaboo! And she loves it. Peekaboo with a 5-month-old is incredible, of course, because they don't have object permanence. Every time we disappear under the table, she has no idea where we went. And every time we come back, she is surprised and elated. She smiles and she laughs and she kicks her feet. She can't get enough. Actually, object permanence is kind of a bummer of a thing to have these days. When you have object permanence, you believe that things will stay where you left them, and that, in general, things that exist will continue to exist. And lately, that hasn't been holding true. One day, you and I can go to Massachusetts, and the next day, it's on the do not travel list. One day you can go and get a latte from a cafe you've been going to for years, and the next day the doors are closed. One day we can worship in the sanctuary, and the next Sunday we are back to virtual. Nothing much these days is feeling permanent. And so it is hard to plan. In fact, all these months into this pandemic, I've been finding it quite paralyzing. Last week at this time, after a combination of the mask mandate, our rising, spiking caseloads here in Maine, and the sanctuary ventilation, made it clear that we would need to pivot back to virtual worship. I was completely at a loss. I was so sick of coming up with creative ideas. I was so over recreating ways of worshiping. I felt like I was completely out of options. I said to myself, well, I guess we will just keep doing Sunday worship the way that we've been doing it. And it will just be the same. But it will be worse, because there won't be anyone in the sanctuary. It will be the same, but lonelier. We are under all these restrictions. What can I do? What choice do I have? That must have been what the servant in Matthew 25 felt like as he dug his hole in the ground. His head was full of the fear of what bad could happen. And it was so full of that there was no room for anything else. All he could picture is what he could not do. And so, even though he had received a great blessing, he lived his life as if nothing had changed. He scraped by on his meager slave earnings, eating hard bread, sleeping on the cold floor, with his treasure buried in the ground. His life was completely the same, only worse, because now he had to worry that someone could come and steal his coin. After the all-church email went out on Monday explaining the decision, I heard from some of you. Pastor, you said, there must be something that we can do. I wasn't sure there was, but I prayed about it. And I asked for God's help. Not long after that, one of you told me about a fantastic gathering that you had had around a fire pit. And the next day, one of you brought me a printout of a radio transponder. You asked, Pastor, do you know that we could broadcast in the parking lot if we got one of these? Then one of you straight up told me that I needed to think of something in a real hurry because you and your faith needed me to. And then I was in this sanctuary at night, and I lit a candle, and I remembered how beautiful it is in here, and how every time I do that, I wish that more of the congregation could see the way this place looks in candlelight. And I realized something. Just because we cannot have Sunday worship in person, in the sanctuary, that doesn't mean that we can't do anything. Just because we cannot do one thing does not mean that we have to do nothing. And so, if you've read your weekly email, you know a little bit about what happened next, or at least what's happened so far. This December, we are going to do more, not less. We are gathering for candlelit services with a format specifically designed to be safer for COVID concerns. We are taking our small groups virtual with a spiritual practices gathering aimed at giving us tools to get through this pandemic with our faith strong and sustaining. We are caroling with a radio transponder and a fire pit, and everyone singing along inside their cars and watching through their windows as their neighbors do the same. Next weekend, we will see Santa and pick up goodies at a holidays sale that is quickly turning into a holidays car parade, a place to wave at neighbors, drop off your pledge, even donate canned goods to the food pantry. The thing I love about the parable of the talents in Matthew 25 is that each servant in the story received a great abundance. For a talent, just even one, was worth 15 years of wages for a working class person in the Roman Empire. Think about receiving 15 times what you make right now. It would be life-changing. But not if you refused to do anything with the gift, and not if you buried it in the ground. Falmouth Congregational Church. God has blessed us with an abundance of things that we can do. There are so many possibilities, so many ways to gather, virtually, in cars, in person, whatever works for you. There are so many ways to celebrate this season and to lift each other up. What we can do is so much more important than what we cannot. So let us go forth. Let us get creative and enter and live and rejoice in the joy of God, who is the master of us all. Praise be to God, and amen.